Welcome back to Spoiler Free Wrestling, everyone. And TakeOver Toronto 2 was on Saturday night. I attended it live in Toronto's Scotiabank Arena. SummerSlam was from the same arena last night in Toronto. Didn't attend that, but we'll talk about all the events that took place the last two nights here in Toronto. And we'll start things off with TakeOver Toronto 2. Now, this week's episode of NXT was taped before TakeOver on Saturday night. However, we won't talk about that. I'll allow you to watch the show Wednesday night without knowing what takes place beforehand. So when TakeOver kicked off, it was the Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish going up against the Street Profits. Now, just a note from the live attendance, there was a lot of Undisputed fans there. There was groups of guys that were showing up wearing their Undisputed Era t-shirts, like together, wearing like their matching Undisputed Era t-shirts. They'd all stand up at the same time and shout "Baby" whenever Adam Cole was introduced. Despite being a heel group, the Undisputed Era really are kind of this cool heel group of NXT. And I'm going to compare them a little bit, even though I know some older fans will get angry. I'm going to compare them a little bit to the Four Horsemen for a little bit. I mean, the Four Horsemen. Now, I didn't get a lot of NWA growing up, but sort of like with the Four Horsemen was amongst the first kind of times where you saw people cheering for the bad guys. I remember I was watching an old Ric Flair clip, and they clipped to the audience, and this is like the mid-'80s, right? When everybody showed up to the arena, with Sting face paint on, everybody cheered the good guys. But there was a group of guys who were probably like in their 20s or whatever, all decked out in suits like the Four Horsemen would wear, aviator shades like the Four Horsemen, and they were basically cosplaying before cosplaying was a term. I mean, they were dressed up in costume, right? They were playing with costumes. And that's kind of... that's what I saw in the live crowd for TakeOver was a lot of male fans in their 20s or teenagers or young, kind of youngish male fans really into Undisputed Era and really like cheering like Adam Cole is their guy. And I think that was the one thing that really jumped out at me from attending TakeOver Live was just how popular the Undisputed Era are. But like their popularity, obviously they're all great wrestlers. They all built up large followings on the indie scene. I mean, Adam Cole's a 3-time Ring of Honor world champion. So it's not surprising that they are popular, but I didn't think they were so popular that like groups of people would be buying their merchandise together. But on the other hand, that there might have been more of that for this TakeOver because the Undisputed Era were in 3 championship matches. There was 5 matches on the show, not including the episode of NXT taped beforehand. And the Undisputed Era had championship matches in 3 of the 5 of them. So, I mean, they were challenging for every male championship in NXT. And they would only win 1 of 3, but the one they won was the world title, right? And so, the NXT championship, which, would be the most important one. But it started off with the Street Profits versus Fish and O'Reilly. And there was a lot of Fish and O'Reilly fans there. I mean, nobody's going to boo the Street Profits. Obviously, the Street Profits, their popularity is exploding. They've really been given a great role right now because they're the NXT Tag Team Champions, so playing a pivotal role in the tag team division in NXT, and that's a fun division to be on, right? But they're also featured on the main roster, but they're not featured on the main roster in any way which takes away from what they do in NXT. When they are on the main roster, they don't cut promos about themselves, aside from Angelo Dawkins, having a thing for Nikki Cross. For the most part, they're not talking about themselves. They're talking about the show. They run down what has already happened on the show in an entertaining way. So they're not so much on the Raw roster as they do kind of narrate Raw a little bit. Or they have this segment where they basically talk about Raw. And I thought maybe the story coming into this match is, will the Street Profits lose the titles and move up to the main roster full-time and leave NXT? And that's this sort of little unique part about NXT, and probably not unique in a good way, but it doesn't take away from it too much, in that you're sometimes rooting for the people that you want to stay in NXT. You want them to win so they don't end up going up to the main roster, or depending on if you like the main roster better than NXT, you might be cheering for a champion to lose their title so that they could go up to NXT. Like, if you really wanted to see Shayna Baszler on the main roster, you would have been cheering against her at TakeOver, because if she is not the NXT Women's Champion, then there's more chance of her going to the main roster. So it's this weird little thing where you're never quite sure if you should be cheering for someone. But if you really like NXT and you want people like the Street Profits to stay on NXT and not go to the main roster, then you're cheering for all the champions to retain their titles so that they don't move up. I don't know if the Street Profits are going to move up to Raw permanently. Obviously, as soon as Paul Heyman took over the show, they became featured on it. So obviously Paul Heyman wants them on the show. But there's now all these rumors that NXT could expand to a 2-hour live show broadcast on FS1 every Wednesday night. If that happens, and this is just a rumor, it's been reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and it's been reported as if talks in Fox, or at Fox, have advanced to the part that they are assuming that this is happening. NXT is going to be weekly television. It's going to be live. It's going to be 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. If that's the case, then do you really consider NXT as a lesser brand than either Raw or SmackDown? I wouldn't at that point. At that point, that's the next step where it's like, okay, they're on television. This isn't a brand that is completely behind a paywall with the network. They're on FS1. At this point, this is just another main roster brand. And your developmental system is just whatever goes on at the Performance Center, behind closed doors and not broadcast on the WWE network. Because the Street Profits, if they were going to Raw full-time and leaving NXT, one would assume, I mean, this was the last takeover before the move to Fox, before NXT would be on FS1, before AEW would be on TNT. So you would think that maybe if the Street Profits were going to Raw full-time, they would have lost this match. But they won this match. And this was a straight-up tag team match. The Undisputed Era didn't try anything underhanded. They didn't try to cheat. They tried to win cleanly, but the Street Profits did win cleanly. And so I think that's significant too. I mean, they won clean. So now for Fish and O'Reilly to get another crack at the titles, they're going to need to do something to earn it. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, there's definitely going to be new teams in the NXT Tag Team division that we're going to see, or some teams like the Forgotten Sons. Maybe we're going to see more of them. But then after that, that was a great, just on the match itself. I mean, it was a really fun match. You can definitely see how well Fish and O'Reilly work together, and just how much people like the Street Profits. I mean, the Street Profits entrance got a huge pop and really feels just like a big kind of party, right? And I noticed that they came out first too, or did they come out first? I can't remember. Okay, well, whatever. But the Street Profits, I mean, from the entrance on, it just seems like you're having a fun time, and they kind of wrestle that way too, But it was two of the best tag teams, I think, in WWE right now, or for sure in WWE right now. And I mean, Fish and O'Reilly, in terms of how they work, are just fantastic to watch. Like, it's so fun to watch their double team chain wrestling, and Kyle, and they both do a lot of stuff that's very MMA based, but they do it sort of in a pro wrestling way. What I mean by, and like Kyle O'Reilly specifically, he'll do MMA stuff, but he'll do it in a very dramatic or exaggerated way. And I don't know. I find that pretty fun to watch. But Street Profits getting the clean win over Fish and O'Reilly. Then we moved on to a fantastic match, which I didn't think was going to be so, but Io Shirai defeated Candice LeRae. And this was really Io's first big match since turning heel. If you remember, she turned heel, bad guy, at the last in her last program with Shayna Baszler. And she had a steel cage match, which I think was just on NXT television. But she had a steel cage match with Baszler for the title. And, of course, Jessamyn Duke and Marina Shafir came out. Baszler's running buddies from the Four Horsewomen of MMA. Candice LeRae came out to try and fend off Duke and Shafir. But in the end, Baszler had Shirai in a choke. Shirai hit Baszler with the steel door. Baszler tumbled through the door, won the match. Shirai, after losing the match to Baszler, she snapped. She takes out her aggression on Candice LeRae, and that set up this match between Shirai and Candice LeRae here. So I was thinking this is a really important match to Shirai, not just because she just turned heel, but also because, she just lost in that program to Baszler, right? So we've already seen her go for the title and lose. Now we need to see we need to see what's next for Io Shirai, and what's next is this new version of Io Shirai. She's not wearing the mask to the ring. That bubbly music is gone. This is a much darker and more vicious Io Shirai. And it was sort of a perfect mix because you have this Candice LeRae character who's, kind of all bubble gum and happiness. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of, and it was Shirai eventually trapping her in a triangle lock and Candice LeRae going to sleep in what was a really, really fun match that I think a lot of people were kind of surprised that this match was that good. I think I went into it thinking that this is just going to be a total showcase for Shirai, and like LeRae will get in some stuff, but it'll be like a couple of steps above a squash match. It wasn't that. I mean, it was definitely played up as a back and forth match, but in the end, Shirai was just a little better and got the win with that triangle, putting LeRae to sleep. So now Candice LeRae, for Candice LeRae and Shirai, I think that's probably the end of this feud. Unless LeRae decides she needs to get some type of revenge or whatever. But it seems as though Shirai just beat her clean. And now it's on to the next thing. So in terms of top ranked babyface women in the NXT women's division, and you got Bianca Belair is right there. Mia Yim, now that she's lost to Baszler as well. So there's lots of programs and stuff that Shirai could go into now that she's made a heel turn. Then we had a segment. Was this next? Yeah. Okay. Then we had a segment with Matt Riddle came out, and I was just so glad that Matt Riddle was on the show. Because originally when this takeover came out, I thought there was a chance that it could be Riddle challenging for the NXT Championship. You know, he's a huge star. He seems like someone Triple H would really want to put the belt on. But then this last batch of tapings in between takeovers, he's ended up in this program with Killian Dane that never really... they were supposed to have a match on the tapings. Dane attacked Riddle before the match could start. And then there was nothing set up for either one for TakeOver. So Riddle just comes out, calls Dane out. They have a wild brawl that results in both of them going through a table. There's also a whole bunch of extras that got beat up by Riddle during the melee, I will call it. And a bunch of them were kind of regulars on the Toronto indie scene, like Stone Rockwell, the man of adventure that you might see on Impact Wrestling from time to time. I'm pretty sure he got beat up. Sebastian Suave, who's like the founder of Smash Wrestling here, he got beat up. So Matt Riddle, Killian Dane. This is sort of an important feud for Killian Dane because it's him coming back to NXT, but it's also an important feud for Riddle. Like, Riddle dropped a match to Velveteen Dream for the North American title on a takeover. Now, it was definitely played up that Velveteen Dream got sort of a fluky roll-up pinning combination win. But all the same, Riddle's coming off a loss, and Killian Dane's coming off a main roster run, which really never developed. So both of them seem like they need a win here. So we'll see what happens between Matt Riddle and Killian Dane moving forward. Then next up, we had the North American Championship. Velveteen Dream came out, did an entrance with the Raptors Dance Pack, 2019 NBA champions. And also with the Mounties theme song and some people and the Dance Pack dressed up as the Mounties. That was a big hit with those in attendance. Both the Mountie and the Raptors. Very popular in Canada. And it was Velveteen Dream, Roderick Strong, and Pete Dunne. So there was a few different ways to think about this match going in. Like, really, anybody could have won from a storyline perspective. Like, Strong winning the North American title. I mean, it plays into the Undisputed Era going for all the championships. Dunne just coming off having lost the United Kingdom title after having held it for 2 years. So, of course, he's deserving of, you know, a geographically restricted title. That makes sense. And Velveteen Dream, I mean, he's like Velveteen Dream's very popular. He was another one where I really noticed just how many fans were Velveteen Dream fans. He's got a bunch of people really into what he's doing as well. So he was able to pick up the victory here, and this was sort of done in a way where he came in and he stole Dunne's victory, I think it was. Or it could have been Strong's victory. I don't know. But he came in, so he retains, and everybody else looks strong in the process. It's, you know, triple threat match with a little build-up. Sort of the idea is there's a way to keep everybody strong. Austin Theory from Evolve. So evidently he impressed a bunch of people in WWE with his... work on the Evolve 10th anniversary show. Now, he was in the audience, but it's not quite clear if we're going to see him in NXT or not. Hey, maybe we'll see some NXT Evolve crossover stuff. Well, we've already seen that, you know. Maybe we'll see some Evolve guys in NXT. And then we had Shayna Baszler versus Mia Yim. So, this match was... My girlfriend Amy remarked that this match was a little slow. And her response was echoed by much of the live crowd. It did seem like, I mean, there was a story to this match where Baszler was trying to, get the armbar on Mia Yim. Yim was fighting dirty, and I guess the idea, was like, if Baszler wraps her in an armbar, she's gonna fishhook her, grab her hair, or something like that. And so that was kind of the story of the match. It did seem as though sort of the fans kind of fell out of it a little. I think it's significant that Baszler won without any help from Shafir or Duke. And so I think maybe that was kind of the point of this match, is that Baszler's last few programs with the title, she's been have resulted in her title being saved by Duke and Shafir. And maybe the idea is, let's give her a takeover where she just straight up wins. And that was this takeover. And then we go to the best 2 of 3 falls match. Adam Cole defeated Johnny Gargano. And this match was what everybody in the building had just been waiting to see. Adam Cole is insanely popular. He would, there were people enthusiastically standing up and shooting their arms out with such, I'm going to say, veracity. With such veracity, that might not be the wrong word. It might not be the wrong word, might be the right word. That I seriously thought they were at risk of injury. Doing the Bebe, they got so into it. He was really popular, and this match was, it was exactly what the fans wanted to see. So I didn't even notice the cage. The cage was draped off. There was a curtain over it. So from the upper level, all you could see was that there was something draped off, but that could have been anything, it was above the scoreboard. Yeah, it was above the scoreboard. Well, anyway, long story short, I just wasn't looking there. And it wasn't until I heard somebody behind me say, "How long do you think it'll be for them to lower the cage?" I was like, and then that's when I noticed, oh shit, they have this thing draped off. And I thought maybe the reason that the weapons were attached to it was kind of well, everybody's going to notice the cage. And I guess on the internet, the part about the weapons did come through too. So maybe the surprise then is when they lower the cage. Well, there's barbed wire, there's a sledgehammer, there's chairs, there's all this crazy stuff. And so the match was, they had a normal singles match where they went back and forth, unloaded their whole arsenal of wrestling maneuvers. And eventually Gargano decided to take the risk where he's going to get disqualified by hitting Adam Cole with the chair. But then he's going to soften Cole up so much that it's going to give him an advantage in the next round, which is a street fight. So that's what he does. And then the street fight, they brawled all around the arena. And eventually Gargano makes Cole tap out. They lower the cage. They make an announcement. There's no escape. There's barbed wire. There's chairs. They use everything there is. Finally, there was one spot that I thought was incredible. Adam Cole went halfway up the ladder, jumped down, Canadian Destroyer. He had done a Canadian Destroyer before, but that one was off the ladder. The end of the match comes. They're both perched on a table on top of the cage. They both end up jumping over a ladder. They miss one table, but go through a second table. Cole has the wherewithal to drape his arm over Gargano and get the 1, 2, 3. He has to be helped away by the other members of the Undisputed Era. He'll continue on as NXT champion. Johnny Gargano loses after the pay-per-view ends. Everybody gives him a standing ovation. He sort of does the, like, points to everyone and then, like, you know, thumps his heart kind of thing. There are some who believe that was sort of a way of saying, you know, thanks to everyone, but, you know, I'm going up to the main roster now. I don't really see it as that. I don't think Gargano's going up to the main roster. Like, I think we need to wait and see what happens when Ciampa gets back. Now, so Ciampa, there was the belief that Ciampa wasn't going to be back until next year. But there's also the belief that he's ahead of schedule. So if he's ahead of schedule and he was supposed to be back next year, I mean, theoretically, you know, he could be back in time for the next takeover. It doesn't seem likely though. Like it seems like this was a bad neck injury. They're probably not going to rush it. It's probably going to be 2020 until we see Ciampa back. But it feels like if Gargano's going to the main roster, he's going as part of a tag team with Ciampa like they were going to do. And they're far more valuable on NXT. And like we said before, if NXT's going on FS1, even if that's not as important a slot than what Raw and SmackDown are in, I mean, if the goal is to get people to tune out from AEW and watch your show instead, you're going to need some people that AEW fans are going to like. And I think they like Ciampa and Gargano. So it feels like maybe they should stay in NXT, but really we don't know. Like the whole industry is going to get completely shook in weeks now. I mean, well, not even 2 months. It's not even 2 months now. It's, a month and 20 days until the whole industry is completely thrown for a loop. Talent just the announcement of AEW threw the industry for a loop because it changed how talent could deal with WWE by providing another big money option for them. It increased the amount of leverage that all the wrestlers have because there's more jobs out there now. So that they can, case in point, wrestlers used to be worried about getting fired from WWE. Now wrestlers basically can't get fired from WWE because they might end up in AEW. So, but that was TakeOver. I thought it was a fantastic show, and it was great to experience live. And so why don't we stop this video here, and then we will do another one if you want to go over SummerSlam as well. So this was TakeOver. Thanks again, guys, for supporting this channel and this website. Please don't forget to hit the like button or make a positive comment. All that stuff helps the channel be seen by more people. Thanks again. I'm the Guy from Spoiler Free Wrestling.